Hello everyone, welcome to another session in the class of Psychological Research and Statistics. Well, for today's topic, we'll be continuing with what we had done in the last session. That is another method related to data collection. The last time we had done interview method. Today we'll be doing the method of questionnaire. Well, I am Sijike Sani, Assistant Professor in the Department of Psychology from the Bhopal School of Social Sciences, and I welcome you all to this session. So when we talk about methods of data collection, we had already discussed that there are various methods via which we can actually be collecting data related to research. Today we'll be talking about one such method, that is the method of questionnaire. So what is a questionnaire method? Well, it is a research tool wherein we already have a predetermined set of questions whose sole purpose is to gather information that can be utilized for survey as well as for a statistical purpose. As you see on your screen, a questionnaire is something which is factual. So in case if I wish to have information that is more bent toward facts, I would be using a questionnaire, right? And this kind of factual information I'm requiring of a respondent. Well, a questionnaire is also something that becomes quite convenient for researchers, as it allows that we can actually gather this kind of information not just from one person, but if the time allows, we can be actually gathering information from a group of individuals as well. Well, moving towards the next topic related to this session, while you are curating a questionnaire, what are the things that you must keep in your mind? Right? While you prepare your own set of questions or you prepare your own line of questions, which are the major or basic things that you must keep in mind? First, the language that you used while wording your questions, make it simple. Now, this also depends upon two things. You must know your audience. What do I mean by that? While you are curating your questionnaires or your questions for the questionnaires, something that you need to know is, if you have chosen a sample from a very general population, the question word should be in relation to the kind of sample that is. I should be asking questions quite in a basic manner, like, do you think this is correct? What is your opinion in relation to this? Suppose if my sample is from a professional background, then I must be wording my questions in such a manner that actually justifies to their professional background. In that scenario, I can be using words which are quite complex or even pertaining to their field, so I can actually be using some technical jargon as well. However, when it comes to population from a simple background, or as we call the layman, we should be restricting ourselves to basic words. Moving to another concept, moving to another thing that you must keep in mind is, you should avoid questions which can be ambiguous in nature, right? Ambiguous words or questions that can have more than one meaning. If you are students of psychology and if you have any idea about projective techniques, one of the limitations of projective techniques is that the stimuli or the item or the question or the card presented in a projective techniques can be ambiguous. As many number of respondents we have, as many number of interpretations to that questions can be. So that does not actually lead to our purpose of having an objective or a standardized questionnaire. So in short, while you are curating your questions, avoid words or questions which can create some kind of oddness or ambiguity in the interpretations of those questions. Like as you see on your screen, the meme goes ambiguous short answer question. So we do realize that this question is supposed to be short in length in terms of responding. However, the question is, write an essay to cover all the possible answers. So this is a short answer question. However, the description is asking it to be as long as possible. So that creates a certain amount of ambiguity. Moving on, we should also avoid words which are vague. Vagueness refers to that you do not get definitive answers by using these kind of words. Words like often, generally, these should be avoided while we are curating our questions for our questionnaire. I should also be avoiding words like or questions that start from the word why. Why did you not choose this particular educational institution for your child? Now, this is a very general question and there can be a host of factors relevant to this question. However, one vague thing about it is, one, it has multiple responses to it and it may not give me a definitive answer. Two, this question might not be applicable for all the respondents over there. Henceforth, we should be avoiding these kind of words. Another thing to keep in mind while curating, try avoiding those kind of questions which can be embarrassing in nature, or those kind of questions which the respondent may find difficult or may find it quite sensitive to answer. For example, a question based on somebody's sexual orientation, or a question that's talking about the moral nature of the person. Well, these are the kind of questions, it has been seen that in research, people either try to not answer these questions, or they try not to answer these questions in the most true manner. Well, we also have a solution for it. There's one way a researcher can actually get responses in relation to embarrassing questions, that he can be asking the questions in an indirect manner. What is that indirect manner? You don't directly frame the question to the respondent. Rather, you ask it as for a third person. So what do you think, for example, what do you think should be the moral conduct of students in an examination hall? So you're not asking about that particular student, however, you are in generally asking about all those students who might be sitting for an exam and you expect a certain kind of moral conduct from them. Or we can also be using another kind of technique which we call as the sentence completion test. Well, you can be leaving your question and then be leaving a blank over there and the respondent can answer. And it has been seen that these kind of questions, which are a little sensitive in nature, are answered more truly when they are given in a format of either indirect manner or in the format of a sentence completion format. Moving forward, well, we have been hearing about this particular trait for a long period of time in our English classes. Not just statements, we should also be avoiding questions which have double negatives in it. It in itself causes a kind of grammatical error. And not only that, the inclusion of double negatives, that is the inclusion of two negative terms in one particular statement or one particular question, actually makes the statement quite complex in nature. Not only that, it actually makes the meaning of the statement opposite to what it actually seems to be. So we should be avoiding questions like, do you not think that the college student or a college girl should not be involved in household work? Now the person is not quite clear what actually am I intending to ask and what as a respondent should I be answering. Henceforth, in such kind of questionnaires or research-based questionnaires, we should be avoiding questions that have double negative terminologies in it. Another factor, well, leading questions should also be avoided while we are curating a questionnaire. Leading questions are those kind of questions which suggest an answer, and they also represent a certain amount of biasness from the researcher's side. Well, for an example, a leading question could be, don't you think the campus must have a gymnasium in it too? Now, when I ask this question from my respondent, I already show an inclination as the questionnaire, as the person who is asking the question, that I would want the respondent to answer it in a yes format or in an affirmative tone. Well, this takes away the validity or the originality of the response that the respondent had. He might want to say no, however, when he sees this biasness, a passive biasness from my end, where he sees that I want to say yes, he may change his answer from no to yes, and that can be problematic when it comes to quantifying my data or concluding anything out of this data. Now, we come to another trait, that is, we must be avoiding presuming questions. You have two words in English. One is assuming and the other one is presuming. Assuming actually refers to when we actually think something must have already happened, however, we are not particularly sure about it. Presumption means almost the same thing. However, presumption is something wherein we take certain things for granted. When it comes to research, presuming questions are those questions wherein we feel that the respondent must have already experienced it. We are already taking it for the granting, or I'm already taking it as a granted measure that my respondent must have already experienced it, or he might be knowing of this opinion. For example, I'll give you this statement, this question. If I ask a respondent, or if I ask another person, so did you like the taste of avocado? What do you think about the taste of avocado? When I ask this kind of question, I'm presuming, I'm already taking it for granted that the person who's sitting in front of me must have already tasted avocado, wherein we already know that avocado is not a naturally occurring fruit, at least in our country. However, I am presuming that because modern markets are providing us with these kind of fruits from offshores, he may have also tasted. And just to avoid any form of shame and guilt, once again the respondent may say yes, or may give a bluffed answer to me, which is something that we need to avoid. I'll go back to the questions that are already there on your screen, as you can see. One of the presuming questions can be like, do you think that the organization in which you are, they are providing the efficient counseling? So I'm already presuming that one, this organization is providing a certain amount of counseling skills or counseling provision for the students or for the people involved over there. However, the truth might be very far from what I'm asking. There's another question, did you like using our product? So I'm already presuming as a person that this person must have used our product, right? If I'm talking about some kind of vegetable, or I'm talking about certain form of brand, if I ask, did you like our XYZ product? I'm expecting the respondent to already be a customer of that product, which is a presumption. Now, moving forward to another trait, we should also be avoiding questions which are hypothetical. Questions which actually start from what would you think, what if, what would, right? I'll give you an example of it. Suppose if I ask a question, in case if you did not have any form of responsibilities or so much of workload, what do you think would have happened to your academic score? Now, hypothetical questions are good to answer. However, they actually do not generate a concrete answer for research. So that means it does not serve any kind of concrete purpose for my particular research study. Henceforth, this kind of question should also, or these kind of wordings should also be avoided. Moving forward, if I have to give you in a crux or in a summary, what all should you actually keep in mind while curating a questionnaire, then these are the points that you need to keep in mind. One, while you are curating your questionnaire, keep in mind the purpose and aim for which it is being curated. Remember that specific topic, and your topic, the question should not go or deviate away from the topic. It should actually be asking those kind of questions which give me answers specific to my research topic. Well, the second factor that must be kept in mind, the questionnaire should not be lengthy. Well, it should not be, it should not in terms of size, it should not be short as well, right? Your questionnaire must not have those number of questions that finally the respondent finds it boring to answer and quits the questionnaire in half. As we had already talked about, the wordings, the directions, the instructions in the questionnaire must be simple so that whosoever attends it, be it a professional or a layman, understands and interprets the question in the same manner as you wish, as a researcher, as you wish the respondent to interpret. The questions should be objective in nature. That means the kind of answers that you get, you can actually assess it properly. So the question also should be framed in such a manner that you get answers pertaining to the nature of your question. As we have already talked about, avoid embarrassing, presuming, as well as hypothetical questions, because they won't serve the purpose of having a standardized objective research study data. Well, when it comes to order of sequence of your questions in your questionnaire, the sequence that you must follow is from general to specific, from behavioral information to opinion or attitudinal information, right? Asking quite sensitive questions in the beginning may actually hinder the respondent from answering the questions that are there at the back of the questionnaire or in the later part of the questionnaire. So we should always avoid asking sensitive questions in the beginning part of the questionnaire, and we should go from general to specific. Finally, a very simple factor to keep in mind, that your questionnaire must be easy on the eyes, or as we say, it must look neat, it must look organized, it must be neatly printed, because that actually shows the sincerity and the seriousness of your study as well, and the respondent would also understand that from what he sees in front of him in the form of a hard paper questionnaire. Now, once we have established that what are the good features of a good questionnaire, let us go forward with what kind of a function does a questionnaire serve. Basically, it has two major functions. One is descriptive, or as you see on your screen, description. The purpose of it is that it talks about that it will describe the various traits of the individuals involved, that can be related to age, that can be related to gender, your income. So a questionnaire can be describing information related to it. Suppose if I actually conduct a research study and my questionnaire is for 18-year-olds in the college that I'm teaching in, that data that I get, the age factor in itself helps me to actually relate my data to that particular age group. Also, when we talk about the second function of questionnaire, it is to measure. As we mentioned that there are many traits that you might be actually describing in the questionnaire, in the same manner, how do we assess those traits, right? That purpose can be served via the measurement function of questionnaire. Moving to another aspect, what kinds of questionnaire do you usually come across? Well, we can actually divide these two different types on two major concepts. You can be having questionnaires on the basis of the kind of responses the respondent gives, or you can also be having questionnaire on the basis of how that questionnaire or that test will be administered. Well, coming back to the first one, we have the fixed response questionnaires, wherein, as the name goes, the questions are framed in such a manner that you will get specific answers pertaining to it itself. Though I have written on my screen yes or no, however, it can also give you further specific answers as per the nature of your study. Well, open-end questionnaires are those which might not be as objectively framed, because the purpose of these questionnaires is to get as detailed and lengthy answers at the same time as true and general answers that we can get from the respondent. Coming to the method of administration, the first kind that we come across is mail questionnaire. Though in today's time we have various platforms, online platforms via which we can be actually collecting data in the method of questionnaire. Mail questionnaire is one of the classic methods wherein the questionnaire is sent via your emails, via your mails, and the respondent is given a stipulated time period within which he has to respond and send back the answer. However, research study says that 70% of the questionnaires actually don't get answered, and this purpose may seem futile for a few. Well, face-to-face administered questionnaire is one of the methods wherein the respondent and as well as the administrator of the questionnaire are sitting front face-to-face, and the person has to answer question there and then itself. We have almost come to the end of the session. We heard about what a questionnaire is. We also heard about that what all should you be avoiding and what all should you be incorporating while you're framing a questionnaire. We saw different types of questionnaires as well. We saw the functions of questionnaire as well. Now we finally come whether this questionnaire method is actually of any purpose, is any advantage to me or not. What we see is a questionnaire method, as I mentioned in the early on phase of our session, that can be administered at one point of time to a number of people, so it makes it less time consuming. It also gives me the benefit of validity of the collected information. Why? Especially in the case of face-to-face administered questionnaires, I know who my respondent is, and I also know whether my respondent answered that question or not. So that gives me a certain kind of validity to the data that I have collected. Another benefit to this method, as the researcher, especially for face-to-face administration method, as the researcher is always there, well, he can be answering the questions of the respondent as and when they arise. Moving on to the last advantage that we see, because in this kind of method, suppose as an investigator, I wish to have more further detailed information than what has been given to me on a parchment, I can be asking my respondent to further elaborate the answer that he gave, and that gives me another scope of elaborating my data. Now, coming to the last portion of this session, that is, as we have, every coin has two sides to it, we also have another side to our method of data collection, and that is the limitation part of it. Well, in a scenario wherein I'm answering questions and my invigilator is just breathing upon my neck or is in front of me, for sure the respondent may become conscious and may end up giving either socially desirable answers, or because he is so conscious, he may not answer the way he would have answered it organically had there been no researcher in front of him. Second, in certain scenarios, suppose if you have to collect data wherein you need to travel and personally collect information from the respondents, in those scenarios, the method can be costly as well as time consuming for the researcher who is actually collecting the data. Another factor that makes it a little biased is because we may not have the desired sample all the time. Sometimes questionnaires are administered to the people who are accessible and easily, conveniently available to us. So they may actually restrict the quality of the sample that we wish to choose for the study. So that was all from my end, guys. This was the method of data collection in specific relation to questionnaire. I hope you actually attained a certain amount of information. For more such information, kindly stay tuned to this particular page. Thank you all.